Welcome to the Mark Attwood Show, Adventures in the Cosmic Suit. Today I'm joined by Bob Eden. Hello, Bob.
Hey, g'day, Mark. Thank you.
You're on an island somewhere, aren't you?
I'm up in the Whitsunday Islands in Queensland, Australia. For all you navigators, that's 20 degrees south and about 148 east of Greenwich.
I don't know how many sailors watch this show, but that's very useful for anybody that wants to find you. If Bob owes anybody money, you know exactly where to go now.
No, I'm debt free, mate.
No, it's just a joke, mate. It's just a joke.
So right.
You are well, you're English.
Yeah.
How'd you end up down there or across there?
Well, I could be Irish and some of the boyfriends my mother brought home, but that's another story. And yeah, I emigrated in '89 with my family, and yeah, November '89, and they didn't like it, and they went back a couple of months later. But I knew in my heart of hearts that this is where I needed to be, which is why I don't own a pair of shoes. I walk this land barefoot. And apparently in a previous life, I was a tribal elder in the Northern Territory. So yeah, this feels like, you know, I have a very deep connection to this land down under.
Well, I know that you're a great musician and a sailor. What else? But you've got a really powerful story in terms of your fight against depression, because as you put it yourself, if you type into Google and say, is there a cure for depression, the answer is generally a no. But you disagree with that, and you've been working on it for a long time. So why don't you tell us what you've been up to, or how you can help people with depression?
Okay, well, the best thing I can do, Mark, is just quickly read through my story. It'll probably take me about 10 or 12 minutes.
Okay.
And it ends up with a few key points. And this thing came to me in one hit. It's like you were saying, the stuff that you write comes through you, and this came through me. So with your indulgence, I'll read it so that I don't wander off and get distracted. Okay, folks, here we go. My story, the wounds and lessons of childhood. I was born in 1952 in England, very premature and delivered by cesarean section. My mother never forgave me for the sky on her belly, and I was about 2 pounds at birth and was not expected to live, but I did. I'm a survivor. Not sure where I chose my family. Mum was prone to violent outbursts of rage. So if I got in range, I got hit, whether I'd been good or bad. So basically, I got the crap beaten out of me for many years. So the message I internalized at that time was, Mum is often beating me, therefore she does not love me. I must be unlovable and it's all my fault. And the other message was, and the world's not a safe place. And then Dad was a mythical being. He was always at work. He came home after I went to bed and left for work before I came down for breakfast. So the message I got from Dad was, Dad never spends any time with me, therefore he does not love me, so I must be unlovable and it's all my fault. Now, when I was 6, Dad disappeared completely. He had a nervous breakdown and committed himself to Fairmile Hospital in Wallingford. Now, I went to see him when I was 9, and by that time he was institutionalized, just wandering around muttering phrases that he'd heard. He did not need electric shock therapy. Poor bugger, he just needed a holiday. Anyway, to take the spotlight off my crazy family, Mum a rageaholic and Dad a workaholic, I became the people pleaser and totally abandoned my needs to please others. And that's a habit I took way too far into adulthood. Now, when I was about 3, it felt like somebody had given me a wheelbarrow. And so I started pushing it. I was young and strong, so it was okay. But as I moved through life, more junk got dumped into it, like my childhood abuse, my socio-cultural conditioning, the indoctrination of the education system, and all the rest of society's constraints, until such time as it got too heavy to push anymore. And that time was November 1984, when at 3 a.m. I woke up and had my first panic attack, and my arms and legs were just moving however they wanted to, and it frightened the crap out of my wife, and I wasn't too pleased with it either. And that's when I began my dance with depression. Well, my fight with depression. Took me a while to turn it into a dance. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't think my way out of it. I had a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful kids, detached house, in the UK, holidays in France. We were living the maintain life. But so what happened? And so the cycle of medications and psychologists and psychiatrists began and continued for many years. Now, skipping back to childhood to keep things chronological, when did I first start disbelieving in me? And my earliest recollection was I was about 4 3/4 years old. It was a Sunday morning, and I combed my hair and brushed my teeth, put my red t-shirt on, bounced down to breakfast, and Mum said, "Bobby, go back up and put your blue t-shirt on because your blue t-shirt, you love your blue t-shirt." So I stood up confused, thinking, no, I love my red t-shirt. But I can't argue with Mum because Mum's Mum, and she's very violent, and she's about 80 foot tall. And so I went and put on my blue t-shirt. And that's my earliest recollection of me no longer believing in myself. And more, that trend just extrapolated through my life. Anyway, so how did I dig myself out of this hole? My family and I emigrated to Australia in November '89 for a fresh start. But after 13 years of working so hard, we realized that we'd become strangers and that our marriage was just as shallow as the rest of my life. And after a bit of soul searching, we decided to part because in our 13 years of marriage, we never had an argument. We never shared our truth. We just kept swallowing anything, that came up. So we were just strangers living a lie. And we started snapping at each other. And, the writing was on the wall. We could see that, very soon we'd be hating each other. And that's no environment to bring up kids. And so all that was painful. We parted and then went back to the UK. And I stayed. I must have cried for months and months and months. But I got some good support from the folk scene in Perth in Western Australia. Got a job in automotive research and started rebuilding, but still with the old survival behaviours in place. My intellect was having a ball working in research, and I was developing, following in the folk scene and playing in many bands in and around Perth. But then about 1992, I came across John Bradshaw's work on healing the wounds of childhood, and that guy saved my life. Yeah, with my partner at the time, who eventually became a psychologist, and that was the end of that relationship. But anyway, we bought all of John Bradshaw's tapes and used to play them 2 or 3 nights a week for friends, and so after a couple of months, I was word perfect on all of John Bradshaw's work. And it was like body knowledge by then, which is what I'm doing with your course. I'm playing the stuff over and over until it becomes body knowledge, but I digress. Yeah, and it was about that time that I'd been taking antidepressants for probably about 10 years by then, and I used to work in research, so I've got that approach to things. So I started compiling a database of all the antidepressants I'd taken and listed all their effects, and there are no side effects, they're all effects, and began to realize that they all have a common denominator, that they could all produce feelings of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. And that sort of, became a no-brainer. I thought, well, why am I taking these things? Because every time I changed medication, I became another person that wasn't me, somebody that I hated. Anyway, the crux, the most important thing about healing the wounds of my childhood was I had a very violent childhood, right? And, I'm not after a sympathy vote here. As most kids, I thought this is just normal, every kid has a childhood like this. Mum even sent me to school at 5 years old. She was a refugee from Germany, She sent me to school in England wearing lederhosen with a crew cut. So I was a crap in the playground. I got the shit kicked out of me at school and then got bashed with a bloody frying pan at home. So there was no safe place for me, you know, no safe place for me. Whoa. So this is the most pivotal thing I ever did, the most important and hardest thing I ever did. I wrote a letter to Mum. Dear Mum, I'm writing to tell you how I felt as a child growing up in our family. This is not about blame. This is just about telling you my story. Please tell me your story. So I started off, and I thought it was just going to be 2 or 3 pages, but it ended up being about that thick, you know, like War and Peace. Mum, I hated it when you dangled me by my wrist and beat me with a frying pan. I hated it when you hit me with a rolling pin. I hated it when you said, you know, if you blame me for the scar on your belly, and you know, I just splurged it all out. Right? Splurged it all out, and got to the end and just reiterated, Mum, I'm not blaming you. I'm just telling you my story. Please tell me yours. Your loving son, Bob. And I posted it to her back in the UK. Now, the reason I wrote that letter in my own journey, I was like, it's torn apart. Like, I hate you, Mum, you know, because you're always beating me. I hate you, but you got to love your mum. You've only got one mum, and it was that dichotomy that was tearing my soul apart. So I posted that letter, and that, Mark, that's going to be the hardest thing I ever did. You know, eventually I got a letter back from Mum, and she said, "Well, Bobby, you must think I'm the best mother in the whole world, but I was only doing my best." And I wrote back, "Mum, this is not about blame. Please tell me your story." So about 6 months went by, and Mum wrote back, and she was born in 1924 in Germany between the wars. Dad was an alcoholic. Mum was a control freak. Cousins were, you know, in the SS, so they were shot. So basically, she had a shit childhood too. Now, by her sharing her story, I could then, the light bulb went off. Yes, Mum was doing her very best, but all she was doing, she was dumping on me what got dumped on her. And so by hearing the story and gaining that understanding, I could move from hate with understanding back to love, you know, and then realize that what I'd done in writing that letter, I'd broken the multi-generational cycle of abuse. And there's a caveat to that, Mark. About 3 years ago, Mum's been dead for quite a while now. Just before she died, I managed to phone her in the UK, and she was back in hospital with a second bout of bowel cancer. And that's the first time we spoke as mother and son, 2 adults. Tears streaming, both of us. And the following day she died. And then about a couple of years ago, I got in touch with Mum through a medium. And this medium told me stuff that only Mum and I knew. So I knew that the medium was fair dinkum, you know. And the message I got from Mum then was, she said, Bobby, thank you so much for writing that letter, because now I am doing the same work with my parents in the beyond. Now that blew me away. That just, you know, you just don't know, do you? You just don't know. Oh, anyway, after all that, I'm feeling that somebody's taken an elephant off my shoulders. Oh, God, hang on. Got a niggle here in my shoulder. What's this niggle? Dad, you bastard. So I got the notepad out and wrote, "Dear Dad, you know, why didn't you ever spend any time with me? Why didn't you ever go fishing? Why didn't you, you know, and yeah, why didn't you come to school?" It wasn't a very big letter because there wasn't much to write. He just wasn't there, you know. But I wrote what I could, got it all out, put it in an envelope, and he'd already died. So I just wrote, "To Dad in heaven," and burnt that. And so it's like I knew I couldn't change my past, but I had this feeling that I could go back and heal my past. So that's what I did by going through that process. Oh God. And that's really the start of it, you know. Continuing with my inner work, personal growth work, and working on this God project.
What's that? Tell us about it.
Well, it came to me. I was living on my boat in Pioneer Bay, and I've done loads of shows on the gift of depression. You know, loads of radio shows and quite a few of these sort of interviews. And I suddenly realised this is like, you know, and you can stick religion up your ass, mate. I'm a very spiritual person, but for me, all religions are about control. You know, they can call you the flock, well, they can flock off. Yeah. So it just came to me. It was right in front of me. Everything I'd written was about the gift of depression. Now, it was the pain of depression that actually drove me to find my way through. Because I sat down on the boat one day and thought, well, hang on, because, you know, I got the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I'm taking all these antidepressants because I'm having all these overwhelming feelings. So I just sat down quietly on the boat. I thought, well, Bob, let's have a look at this pain. Where's it coming from? And then I realized the pain I was feeling was, one, that I'd stopped believing in myself, and two, that I was living my indoctrination, I was living my programming and wasn't living my truth, following my heart. And so that's when I started working, and that's when I turned my fight with depression to dancing with depression, and it became a gift, because it was the pain of that I was feeling, which is very, very real, that drove me to find my own soul solutions. That's SOUL, solutions, and I found them all within my heart. So in my journey, I had to find a way of silencing my mind so I could actually listen to my heart. And once I'd mastered that skill, and I did it using creative visualization, but I won't go there because, you know, time is short. We can talk about that later, or people can check out soon when I launch the God Project through what we're doing, you know, in the course. So, pain and depression. Yeah. So there I am on a boat, and I just took the medications and threw them in a drink. You know, there's no psychotic bloody sharks out there. And I went to hell and back 2 or 3 times a day for probably almost 2 weeks. About it didn't matter, you know. I was shaking, I was screaming, I was shouting. And another realization came to me, like, I've got an amazing intellect now. Not as good as yours, but it's up there. And it was more of a blessing. It was more of a curse than a blessing, because I could not think my way out of depression.
Yeah.
Because it was nothing to do with the mind. It was a wound of the soul. And it was by feeling, letting all these feelings, the body memories that I trapped from my childhood, splurge out, vomit out. It was the feelings that did the healing. And so I got all those feelings out. And I did a ACA course on adult children and absent parents. And I did another one on anger management and stuff, because Mum had all the anger, so I never knew how to deal with anger. If something pissed me off, I just put it in the pressure cooker, and I put it in the pressure cooker. And then somebody, after 2 years of being Mr. Nice Guy, somebody would say something slightly innocuous and get Krakatoa. And it was, so now I express my feelings in the moment. And how can I put it? When I had that first panic attack, my body was just responding to these overwhelming feelings. And so the medication was good for a short while, because, you know, you can't walk when your body's doing all this and you can't function. So they were important for a short while to, you know, dull my feelings down. But my realization was that what I was afraid of was how powerful my feelings were and are, and that they're nothing to be afraid of, because they are purely a measure of how powerful I am. So, you know, it's like turning turtle. You know, what I was afraid of was just really how powerful I could be and how powerful I am now. So I'll just get down to what I've got, six or seven steps there, and I've missed a bit. When I was on the boat, 2005, I got my Master 5 and became a ship's captain. So it's Captain Bob. And first time I took a boat out was, bugger Bob, the buck stops with you, mate. The buck stops with you. You are responsible for the lives of these people on the boat. You're responsible for everything, the vibe, the lot. And then bing, the light went off. And all I did was I took the ideology, Mark, and I applied it to my whole life. Yes, I am master and commander of my life, and I take full responsibility for this life that I do create. Boom. And so as master, I sat down and thought, well, what's my life purpose? Well, I'm master. I'll set my life purpose. So I set my life purpose to be just to simply find my own truth. And how do I know what is my truth? Whatever resonates with my heart. So that's the journey I've been on. That's my life purpose. But also, as a spiritual being, having a human physical experience, I thought, well, how do I want to experience this life, you know? So I set my own conscious life intention to be, I am here to have a gentle, joyful, loving, healthy, and abundant life. Now, that I am here to have is invoking the power of I am, and it's my command to the universe. So I am here to have gentle, joyful, lovely, healthy, and abundant life. So that was my command to the universe. And since I put that in place, Mark, that is precisely how my life is unfolding. So I'm just kicking back and the universe is doing all the hard work. And I faced my own death probably about a dozen times. And not because I'm sort of weird freak, it's just the life I've led, you know. And that's another thing that's missing in Western culture, that rite of passage that the tribal people have, you know, when they take young bloods through an initiation, which usually involves them facing their own death. That doesn't happen anymore, you know.
No.
My initiation was my mate's turn. It's very spiritual. But the steps, the 6 or 7 steps I've listed at the end of my little story is, the first step was empty the wheelbarrow. And by that, I mean, you know, question everything. Now, is this true for me? What my parents told me, is that true? What I learned in school, is that true? The socio-cultural, like every nation has its own vibe and its own sort of rules and regulations, you know, like the British have got their stiff upper lip, you know, and the Yanks speak with their mouths, speak while chewing food. Anyway, you know what, socio-cultural conditioning, just getting rid of all that, deprogramming myself. It took me 20 years to deprogram myself, to get rid of 40 years of deprogramming. So number 1, empty the wheelbarrow. 2, question everything. 3, deprogram myself, re-establish my belief in me, follow my heart, trust my intuition, and giggle a lot. Because I think the attribute that I love about me, and I'm 70 this year, and it's my 58th year as a paid stage performer. But what I love about me, treasure about me most of all, is my indestructible sense of humor. You know, it's like, what is it? They say never discuss religion and politics. Well, I love this one, Mike. Religion is for those folks that are afraid of going to hell, and spirituality is for those folks that have already been there. And Mark, I've bloody been there, mate. You know, and so that's my mission now. I've moved on from the gift of depression to the end of depression, and now my mission is to eradicate suicide, because it is doable. And just as a brief explanation, let's take PTSD, and going back to one of my mantras, keep it simple, sovereign. PTSD. Now, the biggest wound that I feel that a soul can carry is to go and take the life of another human being, you know, to go to a foreign country and shoot somebody like that looks like you, you know. That has got to be the ultimate soul wound. And yet in our society, people are programmed to believe it's an honorable thing to do. So they go and do that. So they have committed the ultimate sin, but there is a price to pay, because everybody at their very core knows what's right and what's wrong. And so when they come back home, what manifests in the physical is because of what they did in the spiritual. And so they don't need medication, they need healing, and they need a way to be supported in deprogramming themselves, you know. And ADHD, I'll throw another one, ADHD. When I was a kid, I was like this, Billy Whiz. I didn't want to sit down for 5 hours. You know, one of these bastards going to learn childhood is not a mental illness. If a kid's buzzing, he needs to expend that energy. And that's what I've learned, that as a counsellor using the reevaluation counselling protocol, that part of the system is to get rid of distress, and that you just do that by, you know, letting your body do what it wants to do. You know, don't do it in the supermarket; they throw you in the loony bin. But you know, but it's, my body is so much smarter than me, Mark. It really is. You know, my body always knows what it needs, and it always tells me. And if I ignore it, it tells me harder until I do listen.
It's a bit like my cat.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks so much. I could go into much more detail, but I think I've sort of sown the seed. I'm just a simple bloke, and if I can find my way through, I reckon anybody can. And in this period of awakening, this new age of integrity that we have entered since 2012, the time is right, because this lie began in about 1860, 1870 with the birth of psychiatry. You know, where if you were an unwed mother, you were thrown into bedlam for life because you were considered insane. Or if you were a homosexual, you were banged up for life because you were considered insane. And every year, these psychiatrists just sit down and fabricate out of thin air more insanities for their great big DSM manual. And it's all bullshit. It's all lies. You know, there's no such thing as mental illness. Stefan Molyneux's got a great presentation on that. But for me, I know within my inner knowing, in my heart, that there is no such thing as mental illness. Not one psychiatrist from the research I've done has ever claimed to have cured anybody. Psychiatrists, in my experience, just gave me tablets to numb the pain. Psychologists gave me coping skills to live with the pain. And I didn't want to live with the pain, and I don't anymore. It's gone. There's no way it's coming back, because now I am invincible. I have found, re-established the belief in myself.
And
you know.
you've written this down, haven't you? You've got a book or two out, haven't you?
I've got an ebook and a paperback book. I've just done a file for an audio book. Yeah, it's called The Gift of Depression. It's on Amazon. And if anybody's interested, until I complete all the good stuff that I'm doing on your brilliant course, which I'm really enjoying, they can, if anybody just searches for The Gift of Depression, Bob Eden, all will be found. And it's all free at the moment.
Is it? Are you giving it? I don't teach that in my course.
No, what they can access is free.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is.
So a couple of questions. What do you think about depression being demonic possession?
That really doesn't resonate with me, but that doesn't mean that that's not the case. Because, you know, I know what I know and I know what I don't know, but I don't know what I don't know. So it could be in that box. So I can't dismiss it and go poo, you know. When I was doing that ACA program, there was a guy that was just a 12-step thing. There was a guy, a bit hippie guy behind me, said I had a disembodied spirit on my back. And I thought, fuck, that's all I need, you know. I got enough shit to carry without that. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? All I do believe is that we are all sovereign, unique, and equal, and that everybody holds a piece of the puzzle. And as more people do the healing to reclaim their authentic self, the more they're coloring in their piece of the puzzle. And the more they color in when they put it on the table, the bigger picture becomes clearer for us all. And I just believe that by sharing our stories, we help to heal each other.
I agree. You know, the stories are everything.
Yeah.
And storytelling has been systematically erased and controlled by the dark forces. In
Australia, in Australia, the tribal people, they've got a little mantra, you know, like, all I have is my story. I'm just trying with a good one.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've sat down with tribal elders at Uluru, and the energy at Uluru, I walked the first time I went there. I came across the desert from Perth in the combi, mad bastard, I told you. But you didn't have to pay to get in that way. And I sat down with the tribal elder there and said, hey, bro, I don't want to climb on your church, but is it okay if I walk all the way around it? You know, with a hand on it. He said, yeah, bro, but there are places where you have to back out because there's places of secret women's business. So that's what I did. I spent the rest of the day walking around Uluru, and that's how they pronounce it. Uluru. Uluru. Yeah, with my hand on it, and it was electrifying. It was the same feeling that I got when I sat halfway up the Great Pyramid in Giza in '74, and the same feeling I got at Midsummer's Night, Stonehenge '72. You know, all the hairs on my back of my neck was stood up, and the hairs on my forearms were stood up. There's so much energy there, and that's what, you know. Yeah, I just wish I had the connection to Earth that the tribal people in Australia still do have, you know. And we've got so much to learn from each other, I think, and that's happening.
Yeah, it's already happening. It is happening. So depression is extremely common.
Yeah.
And, you know, I watched a video an hour ago of a man in Ireland telling his story about how he gave his young kid the vaccination, and 2 weeks later that kid died of a heart attack. And I was like, oh. And then I hear the story about your mum holding you by the ankles and hitting you with a frying pan. And I have to ask, what possesses a parent to do that damage, but thinking they're doing their best, thinking they're doing the right thing? It's I think most depression comes, you know, God forbid any more children have to die in this bloody war, but it, you know, I immediately felt, I mean, obviously I felt for the child, but then I suddenly felt for the dad, because when it dawns, I think it's dawning on him what he's done.
Yeah.
And how many people have to carry this trauma. It's just, you know, I'm still unpeeling my own traumas.
Yeah. Well, Mark,
I feel like I had it light and easy compared to a lot of people.
well, Mark, well, the title for my next article, or what it might be my next book, came to me today. And this is, for me, I reckon everybody in Western society should do that. Is the title was The First 7 Years or a Lifetime Sentence. The damage is done in the first 7 years.
Mm.
And if you don't heal it, you live it forever. It establishes the patterns that, you know, you just take to your grave, unless you go and do the inner work, unless you go and heal the wounds of your childhood. That is the most important recommendation I could make to anybody. How you do it, your heart will lead you. You know, the mind is always looking for answers, but your heart already knows. John Bradshaw did it for me. He's a brilliant guy. He's dead now, but Gabriel Marte has picked up his baton, but Gabriel hasn't got a tenth of the passion of John Bradshaw. So, yeah.
So how do we end depression then? Are you this gift of depression scrapbook that you've got is a good place for people to start, and then you're bringing out more work to help because you want to eradicate suicide, which I think is a noble thing.
If I disappear, Big Pharma found out about me.
The only big farm around here is called Mick, and he drives a tractor. Ho ho!
Good on him.
I'm in a week, so you know, I mean, it's good to turn your life experiences into something that help other people. That's the definition of a good story. So I'm glad that you're doing it, and you're giving it away for free, so everybody can go to Amazon and go and get Bob's scrapbook. But there's more coming out from you soon, right?
Yeah. Especially when I finish your course, which
it's not a small course, is it?
No, and you know, for me, it's a case of young bull, old bull. You know, I keep repeating things until it becomes body memory.
It does happen eventually.
Yeah. But I love the way you can fly through things, and I might have a chat with you sometime at a Q&A, because I've only got one question that's you know, sort of holding me back. So now I can leave it for the next Q&A session.
Well, I think we've got a Q&A session this week, but yeah, I mean, there's 25, 30 years knowledge in that course. Anyway, it's a good course, but it does take a bit of commitment.
Yeah, bloody brilliant, mate.
Thank you. Well, look, I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's good for anybody watching this with depression. Go and get Bob's stuff and connect with him. It's very brave. It's a very cathartic thing to actually tell your story as well. That is something I always recommend people do, because a problem shared is a problem halved. But thanks for joining us today. I'm out of time, but I'll see you on the Q&A in a couple of days.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the recommendation of the sailing book, which just arrived today as well.
It's beautiful here, Mark. It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, you know, hopefully we'll be down there on a boat soon enough.
Okay.
Oh, I've got to stop saying down there. It's across there. All right.
Hey, Mark, I've got a map of the world where Australia's at the top. Why wouldn't you?
You know, top. All right. Take it easy, Bob.
Cheers, mate.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.